My next guest is the Vice President of Developers Relations, Mr. Alec Saunders.
Frank.
Nice to see you.
It's wonderful to see you. You know, I so enjoyed those first two talks.
Oh, really?
Fabulous. What a great show you put together.
Oh, okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. So, we were discussing yesterday in preparation of this interview with Alec. Alec is coming straight. He's been an entrepreneur. He's now a top-level executive at a very interesting company, and we know more about that later. And it is his first time in China. So could you please briefly introduce yourself and tell us what your first impressions are?
Amazing, actually. My background, I worked for Microsoft, actually, for most of the 90s. It's really interesting because Zhu Hong, you mentioned Internet Explorer. I was the product manager who launched it.
Really?
Many years ago. And when I left the company in 2001, I started to work for a number of smaller companies and eventually started a company of my own, which was a very interesting and eye-opening adventure. I can totally relate to the need to survive. In June of last year, I left and became the VP of Developer Relations at Research in Motion. And very early on, I learned that we had some important partners and some important customers here in China. So for instance, Tencent and Sina and Ping An are customers, and some of our largest partners, our most successful entrepreneurs in BlackBerry app world are Chinese companies. S4BB is one, and so is Triple M, Triple O. They're the two most successful entrepreneurs building applications for BlackBerry app world in the world. In the world. Not just in China, but in the world. Globally, these two companies are. And so as we were building our business plans and everything else, I looked at it and I said, the growth trajectory for China, for entrepreneurship, is unbelievable. We believe that within the next 5 years, half of all mobile developers will come from Southeast Asia, from China and India in particular. So when an opportunity came up to come and speak here and meet you, I said, well, I'm going to go. I want to see what's going on there.
So, BlackBerry as a company has been a strong supporter of CHINICT for many years already, and I thank you for that. But in recent times, many bad things have been said regarding BlackBerry. So could you tell us what's the reality, what are the myths?
Sure. And you know what? There are a lot of negative things that have been written about BlackBerry recently. And I'm not completely certain why they are being written in the way that they are, because I don't see them from the inside, and I think any rational person, any thinking person would look at it and say, no, I don't see that either. The first thing that you read about all the time is that BlackBerry isn't going to be around next year. Well, that's completely untrue. The company is debt-free, so there's no debt on the books. Last quarter, our cash position increased from $1.2 billion to $2 billion in the bank. The number of customers that we had worldwide grew again. The last year they've grown from 55 million customers to 77 million customers. This is not a company that is on its last legs, not by any stretch of the imagination. Now, you know what? We are going through a transition period. We're moving from our previous generation BlackBerry OS products to the new BlackBerry 10 operating system. And while that's going on, there are going to be some rocky times. There just are. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be stuff that we need to, as a business, really focus on the essentials of the business and making sure that we do the right things to allow that transition to happen. This is the third one of these transitions I've done in my career. I went from MS-DOS to Windows at Microsoft, from the Windows 9X code base onto the Windows NT code base, and each time it's a difficult period of time for the company. But with the right management and the right plan, you can easily get through it. And so I see this one as being no different from anything else that I've done many times previously in my career. So a lot of people talk about BlackBerry. They say it's not going to be around next year. I disagree 100%. There's money in the bank. Customers keep buying the products. And we have great products to do that with. The other one that I hear an awful lot, because applications are the thing which drive sale of handsets these days. The other one I hear frequently is that developers are leaving the BlackBerry platform. And every so often, some small developer gets written up in the news when this happens, because in particular, the U.S. news loves to jump on this as evidence that developers are leaving. And every time, by the way, one of those people leave, it's hard. I don't want to hear that in any circumstance. But every entrepreneur has to make the choices that are appropriate for their business. The reality is that last year, the number of applications that were in the BlackBerry App World store grew by 240%. So more than doubled. At this point in time, there are just over 100,000 applications that have been submitted to BlackBerry App World by BlackBerry developers. And the number of developers in the store grew by 210%. Last quarter alone, we saw a 68% jump in the number of developers that were registering as BlackBerry vendors. So it's far from the truth that developers are leaving BlackBerry. In actual fact, we are having our best ever quarters as a company for developer recruitment and applications recruitment in the entire history of the company.
Wow, very, very impressive. Couple of weeks ago, you had your big show in Orlando, BlackBerry World. And at BlackBerry World, basically, you were disclosing the new BlackBerry platform called BlackBerry 10. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and why, in particular, it is a real game changer in the industry?
Sure. BlackBerry 10 is it's a platform that we've been working on for 3 years now. And it's composed of a number of different elements. You may remember 3 years ago, RIM bought a company called QNX. QNX is a 30-year-old operating system company. QNX, the platform, it powers everything from high-speed trains to space shuttles to automobiles, consumer electronics, medical equipment, factory equipment. QNX is so reliable that when we talk about it from a marketing perspective, QNX is an operating system you put in a place where failure means there will be loss of human life or great financial loss, because it never fails. And there isn't any other operating system out there like it. It's truly an amazing product. So anyway, RIM bought this product, bought the company, and began to mold that into its future operating system. And I think that they started from a great position. Because, we've had two major evolutions in the smartphone industry. The first was when the BlackBerry came out. Nobody had ever seen a device that allowed you to send email, allowed you to make phone calls in the same way as BlackBerry did when it first came out. And 5 years later, Apple had a different view, and they evolved what the smartphone would be into something new. It was a media consumption and a gaming device. And, big change in the industry at that point. A lot of other people jumped on the bandwagon. Google immediately went out and copied it with Android. Where we are today, I think that the smartphone industry is ready for another big change. This is being driven by the fact that processors and capabilities of electronics have now reached a point where you can do some really, really different things with the devices from what it was that was envisioned 5 years ago. For example, small thing, but you can do true multitasking. You can have multiple processes running all the time and be able to switch from one to the next. So when we talk about BlackBerry 10, we talk about three sort of signature things that entrepreneurs, that developers can do with the device. One of them is we talk about an idea we call flow. And applications that flow are applications that meld seamlessly using a framework that we've built called Cascades from one to the next. They're designed so that you can safely operate the phone with one hand. You can swipe side to side and peek at what's going on in different places. You can use it in an entirely different way than you would use a device that depends on a button push to activate an application. So very gestural, very natural way to use the device. Another concept that we talk about with these applications is connect. So this is, and what we talk about when we mean connect is applications that are capable of linking you naturally to the relationships, to the networks that you work with every day. So we've built in a framework into the operating system that lets you easily build in access to Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or any social network. It's extensible to any social network that you would like to make applications become completely social. And this is a really important value. It turns out that when you start to talk to BlackBerry users, one of the big differences that you find is that they're much, much, much more socially connected than users on other platforms. I mean, 20% more likely to be heavy users of social media than any other platform. So BlackBerry is fundamentally a communications tool, and we're building that knowledge of communications, that DNA of communications, directly into this next generation platform. And the third concept that we talk about is extend. So QNX naturally allows you to build applications that can find other devices that are also running QNX and communicate with them. Imagine a navigation system, for instance, in your car, where as you leave the car's navigation system hands over control of your route to the device in your pocket, and you naturally begin to navigate on foot away from the car. So applications can extend themselves. They can become part of everything that goes on in your daily life. They can have knowledge of the world around you and not just be a slab of glass that you stare at while you're on the train, catching up on old episodes of TV shows. So Flow, Connect, Extend, the fundamental ideas and what makes BlackBerry 10 a game changer.
I hope this philosophy you just mentioned is going to be used, because actually it's a philosophy of software development, I would say. And I hope it's going to be used by our hackers right now in the other room doing the CHINICT hackathon. We will see that later on this evening.
Me too. And by the way, that was tremendously exciting to be part of that yesterday. Oh, really? All those folks in the room, that was cool. Very cool.
Okay, I'm glad you love it. Okay, great. So more concretely, if I'm a developer, why should I use BlackBerry versus the other popular platform like iOS or Android?
So when I think about why developers make choices about platforms, two things come to mind very quickly. What's it going to cost me to build it, and how much money am I going to make from it, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't build software. I mean, entrepreneurs, room full of entrepreneurs. Anybody here build software not to make a living? No. Okay. Anyway, BlackBerry 10 is fundamentally a very, very open platform. You can build an application using C and C++, using the native capabilities of the device. You can build it using HTML5 as well. We've got the capability, the support for Adobe Air in there, so you can build an Air application if you'd like. We've got an Android emulator built into it. You can just port your Android code onto BlackBerry 10 and it will run. We've done ports of all of the major frameworks that are out there. So if you've got code that's written with Qt, we can support that. If you've got code that was written for Sencha or Dojo, we can support that. For any of the major gaming platforms, Marmalade or Unity or Shiba, we can support that. And we've got a GitHub repository that's filled with additional ports of additional code frameworks. Cocos 2DX is another one. So if you've got a code base, you can quickly and easily bring it onto the BlackBerry platform. And that's fundamentally very different from building for Apple, where you better build it with Objective-C and their framework, or building for Android, where you're building with Java and the Google framework. They have one way that they prescribe for you to build code. We say, bring your code. We're completely open, and you can get your applications up and running very quickly. And so what happens is, it's not uncommon for developers to come to us and say, yeah, I brought my code base, and it took me a day, or 3 days, or 5 days. The BlackBerry port, the BlackBerry 10 port, is incredibly cheap. It's very easy for a developer to do. So the cost of doing it is very small. The revenue opportunity, it turns out, is very high. BlackBerry is the second most profitable marketplace for developers in mobile today. Yankee Group said that developers make more money from BlackBerry than from Google Marketplace. More money with less effort. Yes. Applications on BlackBerry tend to earn, I think the average number is 40% more than applications built for Google. They tend to be 46% more downloaded than applications built for iOS. Evans Data Research did a study where they surveyed BlackBerry developers, and 13% of them had made more than $100,000 from the applications that they built. And most developers don't make any money from their iOS or from their Android applications. So you can make money from it. You can make more money from it, and it costs less to do it. That's the reason why developers should build for BlackBerry.
Okay, that's very convincing. Unfortunately, I'm not a developer, but if I were, I would.
I think the conference business is a good business too.
Oh, well, not so bad as you can see.
Oh, and I forgot one more thing. In Orlando, we announced a program whereby developers are guaranteed that they'll make at least $10,000 from building applications for BlackBerry 10. Now, there's some qualifications. You have to build a native BlackBerry 10 application, and you have to make $1,000 from selling it yourself first. But after that, if you make less than $10,000 in your first year of sales, we'll write you a check for the difference. No questions asked.
Wow.
So it's a huge investment on our part.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not actually, because you're pretty confident that the people are going to meet their objective, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So BlackBerry in China has been quite a late comer in the mobile market. Mm-hmm. What is specifically on the Chinese market the strategy that BlackBerry is using in order to increase market share and market penetration?
So I can only speak to the developer piece of it.
Okay. Well, this is the central piece of it. So I mean,
but when I think about developers, one of the very first things that we did when I started with the company, which was only 8 months ago, we started to move our staff into the local markets where the software developers that we needed to interact with were. So we've got a team in China now, and we're continuing to add people to the team in China. We're also investing in Chinese events. I mean, this one obviously will be at the Mobile Expo in Shanghai in a few weeks as well. Just last month in May, we announced relationships with some Chinese universities. There's some contests that we're running that are designed to encourage young Chinese developers to begin to build applications and to submit them to that contest. So we're trying to encourage the development of software in that way as well. We also are bringing our BlackBerry 10 World Tour to Beijing in July. Is it July that we're bringing it here? I think it's July. Anyway, okay.
I think it's July 2nd or something like that, right? 6th.
Yeah.
July 6th in Beijing, right?
Yeah. And we intend to continue to invest in those kinds of ways as well.
All right. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you tomorrow.